Good afternoon. The time is now 3 p.m. I want to go ahead and call to order the pre-certification meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections for our PSC primary election. Again, calling the meeting to order at 3 p.m. At this time, I invite all those willing and able to rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Everyone has an agenda there before them. Have you had an opportunity? Has everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the agenda, and are there any proposed amendments? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, voice vote, please.
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion passes unanimously, noting that Board Member Efrat is not with us today. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, ballot adjudication. I believe we will turn it over to you, Director Fall.
Thank you. We don't have any provisional ballots for adjudication, and all the absentee by mail ballots that needed cure were cured prior to election night closing. So we're good on adjudication.
Okay. Any questions for Ms. Fall with respect to that agenda item? No, moving on. We remain with you, Director Fall. Election materials review.
Great. My slides pulled up. Okay. So our outstanding activities, we have provisional ballots that will be duplicated this afternoon at 4:30 p.m. is when the parties are sending their panelists. We have 35 provisional ballots. I think I said 34 on election night, but they miscounted. So it's 35 total. 28 of those are out of precinct. 27 are yes. One is pending an affidavit signature, so they have until 5 p.m. to sign that. 5 were PR, and then we had 2 IDs. One we got the ID for, the other one's pending. So we have 2 that are outstanding that are pending, and then the rest have been accepted and will be those 27, potentially 28 duplicated by the duplication panels this afternoon.
Okay, you said 5 PR.
Yes, 5 provisional. So those are ones that were not in the poll book, but were in Jarvis. So they noticed on election day that for some voters that had a DDS address update recently, their address was updated in Jarvis, but for some reason it wasn't updated in ePolls or in the poll book, which doesn't make sense. So those individuals voted provisionally until we could confirm their DDS registration was correct, and it was. And so those are those 5.
Was it not on the emergency list sent by the Secretary of State?
I'm not sure. I'd have to ask what that was, but it was updated in Jarvis. It was reflecting their new.
So it
DDS
should be on the emergency
Yes,
list.
in theory it would be, yes. But I don't know if they checked that or not. I have to check with the team to see if they reviewed that when they were looking at those
That would
5.
probably be a good idea. And that way the voter would have been able to vote, correct?
Yes, and as soon as Nadeline identified the issue, she immediately emailed the Secretary of State and alerted them and gave them the VR numbers of those 5 individuals. That way they could research it on their end, and they responded and said they would look into it.
Okay, but I believe the point is that there's an emergency list that's provided by the Secretary of State for purposes of the individuals at the poll confirming those addresses. And if the address did appear correct on them on that list, then the voter would have been able to vote via BMD and not provisional ballot. Am I correct in that's what you were suggesting?
I think we
Yes,
always,
okay.
I'll have to check with the registration team to see, because normally when someone doesn't show up correctly and they say, I did update my address, they call in and the registrars advise them what their options are based on what we could see in Jarvis. So I can get information from them to see if they have them check the emergency list or not.
I hate to put you on the spot, but you have the most experience working in polls. You're familiar with the emergency list? Your understanding of the use of the emergency list as provided by the Secretary of State?
I mean, typically it's checked. So, I mean,
That's just a
part of-
standard
it's just part of the
procedure.
process, but I
Right.
mean, my guess is maybe it wasn't on the list, or
Yeah,
You
I don't
know,
want
you
to
know,
speak
I
out
mean, I
of turn
can't-
and assume.
But I can't, I don't know, but yes, I mean, usually that's a pretty, you know, you
Standard
table,
process.
the lists are there.
Okay.
You know.
But
everybody
that
knows.
comes from Jarvis, correct? That list comes from
I mean, can you
Jarvis.
clarify that?
I
The
want
list
to double
come-
check before I.
The list
assume.
come from the Secretary of State.
Yes,
They're the
Which
ones that
means
they're
they come from
printed.
Jarvis.
they're
You would
printed.
assume if it comes from the Secretary of State, it comes from Jarvis.
I think that's why there's confusion, because ePulse is also directly connected to Jarvis.
I see.
So that's why there's confusion as to how something can be updated in Jarvis, but not correct in ePulse.
Well, we've had that problem on several occasions where ePulse didn't sync correctly with Jarvis.
I don't know if we've had this issue, we've had the voter credit issue, but I don't know if, this is my first time being aware of this being an address update issue.
The reason I'm asking is because I think that emergency list is very important. And if it's being printed from ePulse rather than Jarvis, I'd like to know
Sure.
that. Just no conspiracy here, but I just
Sure.
think sometimes they're inconsistent.
Sure, yeah, I think we definitely learned that with this, so I will speak with those team members and have that information for the Monday meeting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, the next outstanding activity is uploading the final and complete results, of course. So once we have those provisionals duplicated, we will get them scanned and uploaded. So we'll have those for you on Monday. Our risk limiting audit is going to be next Thursday. It'll start at 9 a.m. here in our main office. We have 8 teams. The parties have already been notified, so each party can designate 8 observers. And then, of course, as always, the RLA is also open to the public. Just only the designated observers have the ability to move around the room freely, but there will be a public viewing area for anyone who wishes to attend. So as we get into the election materials, there's a few notes. So we have our ballots cast in that first column, then the Jarvis voter credit, and then the ePulse numbered list. So you'll see a discrepancy of 1 on the Jarvis voter credit, and that'll be reflected in the file that's on the flash drives I gave you. We were still researching 1 supplemental voter, so she was just given credit. We were able to get her on the phone and confirm. And so that she has received credit, so I'll have an updated list for everyone on Monday. But when I pulled the numbers at 1:30, we had 11,790. But as of right now, it is 11,791. So we have that match. The Jarvis voter credit matches 1-for-1 on advanced voting and absentee by mail. Once we assign the provisional credit, we'll have that in there as well. And then the ePulse numbered list, you'll notice there's a discrepancy of 6. And I noted at the bottom, we had 6 supplemental voters on election day. So those are voters that aren't checked in on the poll pad, but are added to the numbered list. So they're not reflected in ePulse, but they do receive that voter credit in Jarvis. 3 of those were at the Preco 3 location that opened late, since they didn't have their poll pads when they opened. They were checked in on the paper poll book. So those are 3 of those 6 voters. And then ePulse is only used for election day and advanced voting. So you see we tied out evenly for advanced voting. And then we have our turnout percentages there as well.
And so the other 3 supplemental voters, I know you made reference to 3 of the 6
Mhm.
were voting at the location that opened late. The other 3?
2 were at two were at Mableton 4A, 1 was at Wade Green 02. They were just standard supplemental voters. Should have been on the list. I believe 2 of them were the same DDS issue.
Okay.
So they did that. We always give the poll manager the option. They can either vote provisionally or they can activate if we've given them permission, and they can cast their ballot and put them on the supplemental voter list. So those, I know 2 of those 3 were those DDS issues. So they give the voter the option of what they want to do, and then the voter chooses if they want to vote provisionally or if they want to activate their ballot and cast it. And then I don't know the circumstances around the 3rd. I believe that was the one at Wade Green 02, but she was a standard supplemental voter, and they spoke to the registrar and got permission to cast her ballot as such.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay. And then I just have a turnout by party breakdown, so you can see by each method what our turnout was. So on election day, we had 3,581 Republican voters, and then 8,210 Democrat voters, for a total of 11,791. In AIP, we had 1,180 Republican voters, 2,676 Democrats, for a total of 3,856. And then for ABM, we had 67 Republican voters and 126 Democrat voters for a total of 193. So you can see the total by party there as well. And once we have the provisionals, I'll have the same table with the provisional data on Monday.
Sure.
Okay, so that's it for the numbers, and then I wanted to take a moment to talk about the scanner and the rescan that we did. So before that, I'll pause in case there's any questions about the numbers from Tuesday before we get into that.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk on Firefly about the 1% rule, and was it 270? I forget.
Yeah, section 270, 21,
270.
So where can we see those numbers as they would apply in this runoff?
slideshow. So when we look at these numbers here, the number for the Democrats ballots would have had to have been less than 1%, because that's what the runoff, it's a Democrat only runoff. So if that number had been less than 1%, then we could have, the board could have entertained it.
But this is for the total election, not for District 4.
It's not by-
No, it's
not
for
by
the
district.
runoff,
It's not by.
Not by
It's
race.
not by-
just for the
Because everybody
runoff.
across the state run or votes.
Yes, runoff.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
So
That is, so if it had been Republican runoff, we could have looked at 270, but not for the Democrat.
How embarrassing.
So that is why we will have our standard 148 precincts operating on July 15th.
There we go.
Any other questions?
Is there any way around having all 148?
Daniel?
Yeah.
I see that.
Yes, our lawyers
We're less
answer that
than
question.
30 days out from the election, so we could only move a polling place in the event of an emergency, like a water main break or a building burning down or something like that.
That's moving, but that's not necessarily closing.
Right,
Such
right.
that we can't co-locate at this point.
Right.
All right, no emergencies.
Okay, so I want to take a moment to talk about the scanner. So for those of you who were here this morning, I'll just kind of repeat. So it's hard for the repeat, but as I mentioned in the emails to the board earlier this week, when early tabulation was occurring, when they're sequestered in the room and they're tabulating those scanners, the team noticed that there was a door that appeared to be open, even though there was a seal that was on the side of the scanner, but it didn't appear that it had sealed that door shut. And so that was all I was informed on election night. We were running around. And so the next day gave us time to investigate and see what had happened. And it is what we refer to as the display port on the side. So like I said, it had a seal on there, but the door was open. So we wanted to make sure, we had no reason to believe the scanner had been tampered with, but we wanted to confirm that all of those ballots were tabulated correctly. So this morning at 10 a.m., we had observers from both parties came and we rescanned all of the ballots. It was 921 ballots through the ICC to confirm that the results were the same as the scanner tape had produced. And we were able to confirm that. And so we feel confident that those results are accurate since we've done the second scan. And so we have that confirmation and we'll retain those ballot images as well as the zero tape and the closed tape for the ICC with our evidence for this election. And so in talking with the team, what we're going to do, I'll show you what it looks like in a mix. I think it's helpful just to see it because it's very different on a bucket than it is in the duplex. And so we're going to add a tamper-proof seal to that port door. So we make sure we have a wire barrel seal and a label seal on that port door. So we have a secondary seal on there, which is not required. That port is only used by the Secretary of State. We don't ever access that side of the scanner. So we don't have any need to access it. And so, we are gonna do that, and then you'll see, I'll take the lid off, and then you'll see where we're gonna add an extra seal as well. So this is our bucket scanner, which is what we use when we vote an AIP. So the lid is locked every night, and so, at the end of every night, after they empty the bucket and they do everything, they lock it, and then they also place seals on the front and the back, and they record those seal numbers to make sure that in the morning when they open it, that it is not been opened. So this is the display port here on the side, and so you can see it has a cover over it, and then when you open the cover, this is the door that was open, but then there was a wire barrel seal that was looped through the location where it should have been looped through. And so it was sticking straight up like this, where you could see the seal number just by opening the port. So it was covered all throughout early voting. It wasn't just open. Anytime we have a bucket, this latch is on there. And so when they were checking the seal numbers, they likely just opened it, saw the seal number, confirmed the seal number was correct, and then put the display latch back on. So we're also gonna be adding an additional red seal, like what you see here on the latch, to this seal here, which is not, again, not required. So the only thing that's required is this seal here, but we'll add a tamper-proof seal on the side of the door, and then we'll also be latching this. As soon as LNA is over, we'll add a seal here. So at delivery, all AIP will confirm this exterior seal number and make sure it's correct. And they won't cut that seal until the last day when it's time to remove the scanner from the bucket and bring it back to the main office. So that's when they'll cut this, and then they'll be able to confirm that this seal is accurate and that the tamper-proof seal is still affixed. And then they can remove the scanner from the bucket and bring it back like they.
So the door that was open is
This door right here.
and the Secretary of State's the only one that has access to that.
Well, I mean, there are times where we've had to remove the seals. So the original seals that the Secretary of State placed on these ports when they first purchased the equipment, they were really bulky. And so when we slide the scanners into the duplex, we couldn't do that because of the seal. So we had to remove a lot of those to put a slimmer seal like this one on here in order to get it to slide through, because it's a very tight fit with the duplex, that way it doesn't slide around. So we would have replaced them then. And then also there's times where poll workers just come through and they cut all the seals and they remove them. So that's always a time when we would have maybe had to replace a seal. That would have been captured in their seal account form, of course, in their recap form. But this was the seal number that was on there was the seal number that was deployed during LNA. So all of the seal numbers matched. It's just that the latch door was open, but we don't have any need to access this port.
Surprised it hasn't happened before now.
Yeah, it was one of those things where we were all kind of scratching our heads and, it was an unfortunate situation that should have been caught before and it wasn't. And so now we know we're gonna add those secondary and tertiary layers of security for this specific seal portion.
How many scanners do we anticipate adding those additional
We'll do
levels of
all of our
security for
scanners.
all of the
Yes, so
scanners,
we'll add that to
irrespective of
everyone.
whether,
Yep.
okay.
So, because we do change them out between duplexes and buckets, just whatever the setup is, like for this election, we use more buckets than we would normally because of the co-located precincts. So we're gonna go ahead and do that secondary seal, and then that outside seal will just be after LNA is complete, once they're doing their final seals on the bucket.
Okay, and do you anticipate those, I'm going to refer to them as that interior seal, additional seal that's not required?
Mhm.
Do you anticipate having that deployed by the July 15th
Yes.
runoff?
Yeah, so as they're flipping the equipment we have now, they're placing the seals on there, and then we'll continue to add them as we add no more equipment, or when we start for November, when we'll have more. So we'll start with what we're flipping for this runoff, and then we'll go from there.
And
It'll be
then,
added to LNA.
okay, and then finally on the recap sheet, presumably we're gonna add an additional
Yes.
line for that additional seal.
Yeah, so we'll ask for a visual check on the yes, no, because they're gonna be the type of seals where when you remove them, it leaves that mark there
I see.
where it says void, void, void.
Okay.
So we'll just ask for a visual check, yes, no, is the seal still affixed correctly? They'll confirm this seal number, and then they'll also be
Confirm
confirming the
that
secretary
seal
seal number when it's
Okay.
deployed.
Does anyone else have questions?
I thought it's helpful to see it with this cover. I think it just paints a fuller picture of what it looks like in their states.
Okay, makes sense.
And that was all.
Okay, nothing else from, if there's nothing else from Director Paul, does anyone have questions with respect to her report, her election materials review, or for that matter, have comments in general?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you for a well-run election. And now we're looking ahead to yet another one.
Yes.
So, Mr. White, is there a need, do you believe there's a need for executive session?
Not today. I think y'all probably got an email, summary, I'm not sure if it's copied on it, but, on the SEB case, from counsel that helps us on that, but I'm gonna sort of add to that, and then I plan to talk with folks about that next week,
Next
just
week,
in light
okay.
of the Supreme Court opinion.
Yeah.
And if there's any other, I actually see that there's one other case that's been dismissed, that Ms. Fisher was asking about earlier this week.
Was it really?
While we're sitting here, so we'll have to, I can update you on that, on Monday, but
Awesome.
no
I mean,
litigation updates other than that,
Ah,
so.
Okay, so litigation updates to come on
I do not
Monday.
have whatever email you're talking about.
Yeah, I think maybe they just sent it to Jordan, the one from Mike Kaplan's firm.
If he did, I did not see it, because I
It may have
was
just
in
come.
and out of meetings.
If you
It's a
need
lot.
to forward that.
Yeah, I'll forward that to you. To
Lot.
what I was gonna say is I was working on an email supplementing it, and then I was gonna forward it to everybody.
Perfect.
That way you'll
It's
have.
a lot
that.
to
It looks like it
digest.
came in at 10:40, and I think it was sent to myself and to
Makes sense.
Dan because, or Daniel, pardon me, they refer to you as Dan, and I've got that in my face. Because we were the primaries with respect to litigation that was filed, so.
Yeah.
All right, if there is nothing further, and obviously no need, as Mr. White has shared, for executive session. Obviously, our next meeting is Monday, June 23rd at 3 p.m. It's our regular meeting at which we will be certifying the results for Tuesday's election. That meeting will take place at 100 Cherokee and the BOC room. And so if there's nothing further, we will adjourn at 3:23 p.m.
Great.
Good.
Perfect.